here.
Kelly Roberts here.
Moment and Bossy are here.
Billy Torres here. Matt Mashaja here.
On the phone? We have any members on the phone?
Scott Forster's here.
All right,
Dan Grow is here.
okay. Anyone else?
Kevin Conti.
Okay.
Danny.
All right, we have enough to proceed, so. Were there any public comments? There were none brought to my attention. So we go ahead into our discussion items. And we have our Director of Housing Development here. She's gonna share with us.
Sure. I don't know.
After our last meeting, I contacted Crystal Cervic, the Director of Development, correct?
Yes.
And she brought me up to speed on all that Jamestown is doing for housing, among other things. And frankly, I was overwhelmed and didn't think I could do it justice myself. And she was gracious enough to come and explain it directly herself tonight. But yeah, just in response to our public comment at the last meeting, there is actually a lot going on in town, and I think that it'd be great to share that.
Sure. Do you want me to address the public comment that was brought forth at the last meeting? Or do you want me to just talk generally?
I guess you can start there with interviews.
Okay, so the gentleman, Mr. Andalura, I did watch the last meeting, and I have had a great deal of correspondence with Mr. Andalura. And I appreciate his concerns, and I appreciate, his, I guess, his thoughts on how we are focusing our American Rescue Plan funding. He really strongly feels that we should be focusing solely on housing, and in some of the correspondence, and I believe that was shared with everyone. So I had shared with Dodie, and I think that got filtered out to everyone on the committee. Some conversation that we've had, some of the questions that he had asked directly, and my responses to those questions. I'm happy if anyone has additional questions based on that correspondence, to address any concerns that you might have, or the way that, maybe that I had answered his questions. One of his concerns was that he would like some assistance himself, for some repairs to his own property. He does not qualify for assistance in the city of Jamestown, and there's, the reason for that is because he's not a full-time resident. So his property is on 8th Street, I believe. It is a part-time residence. His primary residence is in New York City. So our funding is primarily HUD funding, and HUD actually prohibits us from investing or granting funds for residents that are not primary or not rental rehab. So should he decide to either move into the city full-time, or to rent out his apartment, that he does have a 2-unit, he would be eligible for some funding, but because of his specific situation, he's not. So I did explain it to him. I understand, certainly where he's coming from, but unfortunately, it's not our rules, it's HUD rules, so those are our limitations. As far as what the Department of Development does and our housing programs, right now the program that we have available is called our Home Investment Partnerships Program. I did pass out a flyer gives you a little bit of information about that program. We are in a process right now where we do have some applicants that we are reviewing, and it is a program that we do have funding available in. The process is taking longer than normal for a number of reasons. One of which is just availability of contractors. We are booking out contractors a year in advance. So getting projects going that are already in the queue are taking an extreme amount of time. And then, the pandemic has really impacted cost of supplies and materials, so. But it is a program that is available right now, and, should anyone be looking for some assistance, that is something that we can help with. We can at least get them in the queue, and, it's not an immediate resolution to, if they have immediate needs and there's an emergency, they can still contact us, and we'll try to work with our community partners to find available funding for some programs that might be open with another agency, and that is something that we do.
Can you expand on the income limits?
Sure,
Just so I
so,
know.
yeah.
Thank you for
So,
listening.
as I mentioned, this is our home investment partnerships program. And I'll back up a little bit, because I passed out some information regarding our annual action plan, which is this little packet here. So right now, we are in the process of developing our annual action plan, which is something that we're required to do by HUD every year, and that will be to, our home program is our home program, and that is something that HUD requires us to do every single year. So those funds are always available. We are able to allocate a portion of those funds to what's called our CHODOs, Community Housing Development Organizations, and that's CRIC and CODE, our two CHODOs. And so they have some programs that they will use some of our home funding to do. And then the other part of our annual action plan is how we are allocating funds to our community development block grant activities. And through the public engagement part of annual action planning, we are in the process of determining what programs and activities to fund in the coming program year.
What is the block grant?
Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. So that is another HUD-funded program. The city of Jamestown is an entitlement community under HUD. So we receive an annual allocation just automatically from HUD. So every year, roughly between, so home, we typically get between 300 and, I'd say 350 and 420,000 towards our home programming, and then around 1.2 million in community development block grant funds. And so there's a number of different activities that we can use that for, and every year we go through the process of allocating funding into each of those categories. And that all has to fall within HUD guidelines. In addition, Elliot asked me to talk about income limits. So HUD funding is, when we're talking about CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, we have to, our programs and activities have to meet one of 3 of HUD's national objectives. So that's benefit to low to moderate income persons. The second one is eliminate slum and blight. And then the third is address or abate an immediate urgent need that is caused by natural disaster, pandemic, something like that. Not like I had a tree fall through my roof, not that kind of emergency, unless it's related to something that would be considered a disaster event, right? So typically that national objective comes up more so when there's, say, tornado or hurricanes or something of that sort. So that's CDBG, and then, home, and so for both of these, anytime there's a HUD program, there are income limits that are associated with, those programs, and so home specifically has, the income limits that you see are for 2021, we're still waiting for HUD to release the 2022 numbers, they will be roughly the same. And so you'll see on this, handout that I gave you, it's based on number of people living in a household, and then what the annual income at 80% of it's the area media, based on area media income. So for a one family, or one individual home, in order to qualify for, or be eligible to apply for a home program, home repair, the limit is $38,850. For two people, the limit is $44,400, and then it goes up from there, when you add additional people in your home. So it's, for this area, it's not a lot, but it's not, below that poverty threshold either, so. And then, one of the things that we did do, our home program in the past, we required a match, and we did eliminate that match, so it is now a 100% grant. So there's no longer a matching requirement. An important thing to note though is that anyone who does apply, whether it's a CDBG program or it's a home program, there are regulations by HUD that a property cannot be sold within 5 years of that program. So a lien is placed on the property. It ends up being really like a forgivable loan, essentially, because if you do sell that property before that 5 years is up, you are required to pay back a portion of the grant over that period of time. And so it decreases each year that you remain in the property. So that's home and CDBG, and I know I talked really fast, and that's a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any specific questions. And I don't know if you wanna look at this at all and maybe pull out some questions from there. You don't have to, but I wanna at least give you an opportunity.
Does all the funding and all these programs get used every year?
Nope. So home, we actually are in the process right now of reallocating some of our home funding because we do have time limits on how quickly we have to spend down these funds. Excuse me, and so home, we are looking to reallocate some additional funds to our CHODOs. They do have programs that they are in need of additional funding for, that they can use it quickly. And their repair programs, exterior repair, emergency repair, so it will go, I think relatively quickly. But one of the reasons that it takes, well, there's a couple of reasons. It takes from beginning to end, I would say a home program can take anywhere from 2 years, I would say, is about the average. So getting somebody going, and then now with the issues that we have with contractors, I would expect that it's gonna be 3 to 4 years to get through a home project. And, something else too that is important to note is, besides the income eligibility, there's a lot of, and I don't want this to scare anyone, there is a lot of paperwork required, and we will hold your hand, right? Like, we don't expect anyone to come in and know exactly what they're doing. We walk you through that whole process, but it is a process. And because we have a rehab specialist who is a building code enforcement officer, and that's a requirement of the program, they are obligated to do a top to bottom inspection of the property and cite any code violations. That's the scary thing, but the good thing is all of those code violations get remediated through the process. So, you may come to us thinking that you just need a roof and maybe some railings on your front porch, we have to inspect the interior. So if there are code violations inside and you've got bad wiring or plumbing issues or whatever, that's all gonna get cited, but it's also all gonna get fixed. So it can be overwhelming for some people, because it is such a whole big top to bottom project. But the goal of the program is to make your property safe and secure and habitable, and, you know, be able to keep the people who live there in that property for a long time. So that's that.
Are there any programs for, that's, middle income?
Well, the income limits are considered to be low to moderate. So I guess it depends on what is classified as middle income. But the limits are the limits. Now, I will say, we are looking at the possibility of being able to do some CDBG programs that will, so these numbers are 80% area median income. We're looking at being able to increase that to 120%, which would get you to that higher income level. But we don't have any currently, and there's a process that we have to go through to be able to get there. So I mentioned that we're looking to amend and reallocate some of our home funding, so that would go to some of our TOTOs. We're also looking to reallocate some of our CDBG funding. We found out about a month ago that our DPW has some additional grant funding for road repair, and we typically allocate, and I can't tell you exactly how much because it changes every year, but we typically allocate a significant amount towards road repair, curb cuts, you know, sidewalks, things that are neighborhood facilities, if you will. But because they have funding that they didn't anticipate having, we're actually able to recapture that, and then we're going to reallocate that to an emergency repair program, which would be for that a tree fell on my roof, or you know, I have this emergency thing that just came up, my hot water tank just blew up, or whatever that might be. So we will have an emergency repair program. It just will take well, the process is long, right? So we have to do a 30-day public comment period. Then we have to take it to council. We have to do a public hearing. Council votes. Then we submit it to HUD. So we're looking at probably summer before that program will be ready to go. And then besides that, so something that we do, and I brought this, and there's a lot of information on it, but it's not complete. So I'm happy to share it, and I can do that through email. But we're working with our community partners right now, community partners that do other housing related type activities. So shop opportunities, I mentioned CRIC, I mentioned code, the land bank, Jamestown Renaissance Corporation, basically any organization, the county health department and their lead department. So anybody that does some kind of service and offers some kind of funding, we are working to pull together a comprehensive list of what all of those programs are. And then we're going to put together kind of a universal intake form that will, because we all take the same information from people when they apply for assistance anyway, so we want to try to streamline that process, and then get us all on the same page so we know what each other has available at all times, and that way if somebody calls us, we can say, oh, we know CRIC has a program for that, or COI has a program for that, or you know, whatever the case might be, and be able to send them directly to that other agency without having to call all 16 of them. So, you know, looking to really collaborate more and at the same time, we're also working to not only understand what each other has, but then also be able to plan to leverage each other's resources. So if someone comes to us for a home program or lead remediation or something like that, and you know, they need additional porch repairs and paint and whatever the case might be, and we know that we've got X amount of dollars in this, but code also has an exterior rehab program, we can actually leverage each other's resources so that they're paying a portion and we're paying a portion, and both of our resources can go further, so that we're not paying for, we're paying for kind of the guts of the house, right, and not spending that money on the exterior when they can do the exterior, and then that means the next property can get all the interior stuff and the exterior done as well. So just trying to make sure that we're really intentional with the way we're partnering and trying to make our funding go farther. So American Rescue Plan, I think, is probably the next topic of conversation. Matt and I talked a bit about sort of our approach to determining how we are proposing our American Rescue Plan funds and programs. So we started with really focusing on the economic development category that was determined by the city as a whole. So when the mayor proposed the plan back in, I think it was April of last year, he, you know, presented this plan proposing $10 million in economic development. I think initially it was around maybe $2 million in housing in neighborhoods, and I can't remember exactly how it was split up. And then over the course of time, we did some public engagement, we had some public meetings, and we kind of moved some things around and determined that we needed to put more money into housing in neighborhoods. So there's $5 million proposed to go into housing in neighborhoods. I'll address a couple of things here. So Mr. Andalura pointed out, and I'm sure that some other folks have mentioned it as well, why only $5 million to neighborhoods and housing and $10 million to economic development. So there's a couple schools of thought there. One is we already have some programs for neighborhoods, and we're developing more completely outside of American Rescue Plan. And we're already struggling to get through the funding that we have for those programs. And we have a really short window within which we have to spend American Rescue Plan money. So allocating all of the funding into housing is not, it just won't work. I mean, that's the reality of it. We will not be able to spend it fast enough. And if we don't spend it within the period of time that's allotted, we lose it. So that's kind of one point. The other point is going straight to housing. And I will say, we did develop a program for a roof repair replacement, sewer lateral, and water line replacement. So that will be coming out shortly. So we are trying to address some things quickly. And you know, we're not done, but I guess thinking back to, we're in annual action planning process right now. We're trying to be very strategic and intentional with the programs that we have and the programs that we might develop. So housing is really, really complex, and the issues that we have are really complex, and we wanna make sure that we're taking the time that we do have to do it right, and again, to be really intentional. So going back to economic development, focusing on that as kind of our first course. First of all, I mean, we've been working on this for over a year. We've had $14 million in the bank since last May, and we've spent not very much, right? And we have businesses calling, and I know our council members are getting phone calls every day from people who live in houses that need help. We're getting phone calls from people in houses that need help, but we're also getting phone calls from businesses that are trying to stay alive, that employ the people that live in those houses. So our school of thought really was, let's get these economic development programs done and out, because some of them are very similar to some of the CDBG programs that we have, that we're familiar with, that we can get out quickly. A house rehab takes, like I said, 2 years from start to finish. We can administer these grants really quickly for businesses because they need the money now. They need it to buy a piece of equipment, or, you know, add an elevator or add something. So we felt like it was something that we could administer really quickly, and then we can put all of our time and attention into the housing and neighborhood categories, and not forget about the business part, but like they're okay for right now, right? So, and in the meantime, they're not having to lay people off. They're able to maybe bring people back that they have had to lay off, and people that we need to help in housing and help their housing situation still have jobs because the businesses have not had to close their doors. So that was sort of our approach, if you will. So I did give you a copy of, this is the presentation that we've given out at council meetings. We have worked through, we had a special session 3 weeks ago, I think it was, with council to go through all of these programs one by one. Most of them have been approved for further development. I won't go into all that, but so that's where we are right now. We do anticipate requesting that council vote on April 25th at their next voting session. So, you know, like I said, we've been working on developing these further. You'll see eligibility criteria, the evaluation, you know, how we're prioritizing projects, and you know, other considerations that we are applying to each one, and the criteria for tracking and outcomes. So all of these things came from either the U.S. Treasury Department as a directive, or from our public meetings that we held, and that the Community Foundation, when they presented their report and their recommendations, these all came directly from that. So, you know, we took everything that was said and shared very seriously, and we are incorporating it into every single program and how we are selecting projects to actually grant funding to. And then, as I mentioned, what's not in this packet yet, because this was sort of where we started, is the roof repair program, which has been approved, and $750,000 has been allocated to that program so far. And I will just say again, for anybody that actually watches this and is paying attention, that program will be ready to go. We're hoping June 1st. It's not available yet, because we have to do all the stuff. Basically, we're creating programs from scratch, trying to pull, you know, templates like applications that we've used in the past, and just kind of, you know, tailor things to fit each program, so we're not totally recreating the wheel. And we're trying to make things universal across each program, so that we can use forms for everything and not have to create something brand new for every single one. But it's still a lot. And then with each one, we've got to determine, is it JLDC that's going to be oversight? Is it Jura that's going to be oversight? Does JLDC and or Jura want to be oversight? So there are a lot of particulars that we still have to work out. but, we're working through all that as quickly as we can. Are there, I think you had some bullet points, do you have those?
So, my last email, I had a question of who qualifies for what program. I think you've covered that pretty well. Specifically, it's people that own and reside in a home in the city of Jamestown and meet
Yeah.
the income requirements. There are a couple of other criteria on here. Property taxes are paid, mortgage paid, insured, and well maintained, I think.
Mhm.
So that covers that. We've covered work rent. One thing you did mention is that people should attend the annual action plan public meetings.
Mhm.
Do you know what the next one of those is?
Yes,
Is
so
it
that's, excuse me, is somebody handed out? The next one is actually Tuesday, April 12th, at 6 p.m.
And
We'll,
that's tomorrow's, that's moved to Tuesday, correct?
nope, this is, so what we're going to do with the one that was scheduled for tomorrow, we're gonna add that to another, Saturday
Okay.
later on. So the next one that has been scheduled already is, for Ward 3, and we will be meeting in Jackson Taylor Park. And should the weather not cooperate, we will probably postpone that rather than do it here, because we really feel like it's more valuable for us to get out in the community and do it. And this is the first time we've ever done the public meetings this way, so, you know, it's kind of a learning for us. We may have to start a little bit later in the year, or in the season, until the weather is a little bit better, but, we're hopeful that it's gonna be 70 and sunny. And, you know, so we wanna take the opportunity to meet the community members where they are, rather than asking them to come to us. And, we feel like it gives them an opportunity to have some real candid conversations about their neighborhood, and to tell us what's important to them.
And is this document or something similar on the DOD website?
Yes, so this is, we also have a Facebook page. It's just City of Jamestown DOD. And then, yes, the DOD website is actually the City of Jamestown's website under Department of Development. So there's information, in
I've got a
both
copy here,
places.
it's great, but in case anybody doesn't.
Yep,
Facebook.
yep.
Just a point of interest, a lot of people in Ward 3 complain because they're not on Facebook or any, social media type.
We did put this out, in the paper, and it is on the city website. And then when we decided to postpone, we did, send it out to all of our media sources and ask them to push that out too. But we're always open to finding out like better ways to communicate with everyone. We try to hit as many formats as we can, because we understand people get their information from very different places. So we do radio, we do post journal, we do social media, and then our city website. But yeah, if there's other ideas, please share that with us.
I'll have to look into that, because I know most of them complaining now because they don't do all that social media stuff.
Yeah, yep.
Well, I think we as a council can, help reach out to people.
Mhm.
Maybe as simple as a flyer, you know, at a local church in a ward or whatnot, and stores,
Yeah.
so maybe
Mhm.
that'll help.
For sure. Matt, you asked, what category of people is DOD best able to help? And my response to you, which feel free to share with everyone, that email, but, my answer was kind of convoluted because it depends. It depends on what kind of assistance they need. And, I think it goes back to, they have to be a business and or resident in the city of Jamestown, so depending on the source of grant funds. And then, we go through the process of screening and make sure if they have to meet income eligibility, that they do. Have they paid their taxes, have they, you went down the list, and each program kind of has its own criteria as well, so. And then, you know, I guess to reiterate, with CDBG programs, and we don't expect people to know the difference, you know, we provide information about that, but, the national objective, so benefit to low to moderate income persons, you know, in talking with other agencies in the county, we know that most households, the majority of households in the city of Jamestown actually meet income qualifications, so, you know, we can help an awful lot of people. So, anyway.
And I think you mentioned last week as well that there was some assistance for landlords.
Yep, so we did get approval from, council to move forward and submit a rental rehab, program. So this was an additional funding from HUD, an additional allocation that is, outside of our normal allocation, and it's for home / ARP, American Rescue Plan. And that's, about $1.2 million in addition to our regular allocations that we're getting. And the biggest difference is we actually can use it, we cannot use it for a homeowner occupied single family project, like our regular home funds. It has to be, they gave us 4 different program areas that we could select from, and we, chose to do rental rehabilitation. So landlords will be eligible to apply for up to $15,000 in assistance, per unit, and they are required a 10% match. And then we limit that to, non-commercial, buildings, so large, you know, apartment complexes are not eligible to apply. It's for, excuse me, up to 3 unit buildings is as large as the property can go. We're working on some, ordinances, to give us some additional tools, as far as code enforcement goes and holding property owners accountable for the conditions of their properties. So we're looking to roll out a rental inspection, ordinance in the near future. We will roll this program out, hopefully this will have been approved by HUD by the time we're ready to do that, so we can kind of have them both ready to go about the same time. But we are still waiting on HUD to approve the rental rehab, just to put that out there. So yes, we're kind of adding a sort of a stick, as far as, some additional requirements for landlords, but at the same time, we're also throwing in a carrot, right? Yes, we need to do this program because we need to ensure that the substandard, housing conditions that we see all over the city are being addressed. But we've got some help to be able to address that, so. That's one ordinance, and then another ordinance is a vacant property ordinance, so we really want to incentivize property owners to not just sit on vacant buildings and vacant houses. We have a lot of vacant properties throughout the city, and you know, we're not talking about somebody goes to Florida for 3 months and it's empty. We're talking about, kind of the, you know, the predatory real estate investments where, you know, people are coming in and buying, you know, huge portfolios of properties, and they don't reinvest in them, and they just sit on them and hold them as an asset, at our expense. So, we're hoping that this will help decentivize that type of behavior and incentivize people to, you know, should a property be condemned for some reason, incentivize them to reinvest in that property, bring it back up to code, and get somebody back into the property. That deters crime, that deters the blight. So, you know, we're looking at as many different tools as we can to be able to address the huge variety of housing issues that we have. The third ordinance, which will be coming, actually soon, we're hoping presented this month, is a new and improved nuisance ordinance. So our current nuisance ordinance does not, clearly spell out, when a property can be considered a nuisance. So we're adding some language and trying to make that less subjective. It will help our department, it will help the police department, fire department, and then, anyone who owns property understand what their, responsibilities are under that ordinance, so. So that's another one. Something else that is happening, very soon is the county tax auction. And it is, a big one this year. So the auction has not happened for the last 3 years, due to the pandemic, so, it's usually pretty big for the city of Jamestown, and this year it's even more so. We actually have had a number of meetings with the county, and we are working really closely with the land bank to identify properties that, are on the list, that, we kind of go through the whole list and figure out, which properties are probably going to get redeemed before the auction date, because there are definitely landlords that will do that. They kind of wait and redeem them at the last minute, so we can sort of predict which ones that will happen to. And then with the rest of them, we're looking at them for, do they have existing code violations? Are any of them condemned? Is our department mowing them for some reason that happens? And just trying to get as much information about each one as we can. Is it vacant or abandoned? And then putting together a strategy for which of those properties do we work with the land bank to potentially pull from that list? And is the strategy to demolish a building because it's, just really can't be rehabbed at this point, and it's makes more sense to do that? Do we do a rehab project there and try to get, work with CRIC or COI to find people who've been through their first-time homebuyer program, so they have a whole, curriculum and coursework that people can do, and that will actually qualify them for some down payment assistance. But it educates them on what it means to be a property owner, what your responsibilities are as a property owner. And so, once they come out of that course, that gives us an avenue to try to partner with them and pair them with a property that otherwise might be sold to a speculator through the auction process. So we can work with the land bank, CRIC or COI, and then potentially also partner them with a home repair program. So really just trying to again, layer all of those resources and, find ways to stabilize the neighborhoods and stabilize our housing stock. So, the auction is, it's certainly a 800-pound gorilla right now. I think that we're all a little bit nervous about it, but we're trying to, look at it and work with as many different partners as we can to make it harder for people to prey on our community in a speculative way, and discourage that kind of behavior. So, and then also use it as an opportunity to get potential first-time home buyers into properties that maybe they wouldn't be able to get into without some assistance.
You mentioned the first-time homebuyer program. Sorry to keep asking questions.
No, absolutely. That's what I'm here for.
Can you just go into a little bit just what that is? Because I think you told me we have over 50% of households in Jamestown rent. And the goal isn't just to prepare people for home ownership and then get them into a home so they can own a home instead of renting and have all the benefits to themselves and the community that brings.
Sure. So we currently ourselves do not administer those programs, but like I said, we CRIC and Should Have Opportunities both have very, very similar programs. And an individual or potential first-time homebuyer that goes through that program, it's a, I believe, 8-week process. They have to go to classes, and in those classes, they learn, financial literacy, things that you need to know about maintaining a property, kind of all of the things that a first-time home buyer or, you know, a homeowner of any length of time should know, right? Like how to look up what your city codes are, so you know, what you're supposed to do, you know? Not have junk and debris in your yard and cut your grass and, you know, paint your house. And so talking to them about like the cost of what deferred maintenance does, not only to your home, but your neighbors' homes, right? Like it lowers property values. So really teaching them, the participants in those courses about what it means to own property, that it's not just a right to own property, but there's a real responsibility that comes along with it. And then through that process, they actually are able to earn, like I mentioned, I believe it's up to $10,000 towards their closing costs and down payment. So it's a really, I think it's a great opportunity. I know a number of people that have gone through it themselves, and I would recommend anybody look into it. I think that we actually have a program through our CDBG where we will pay for somebody's participation in that program. So we're helping to subsidize that as well. I think it's $100 fee to sign up for the course and participate in that. So, like I said, once they go through that program, then they're free to go and seek out, traditional mortgage, in whatever way that they qualify. It's something that we are looking to do, and talking with the land bank and some of our local banks, establishing a home mortgage assistance program for people who may not be able to qualify for traditional lending. I think that we state that a lot, and that's one of it's great to go through a first-time home buyer program, but if you can't actually get a mortgage, that doesn't help you, right? It doesn't help you move forward. So we're looking at establishing that kind of a program so that we can help more people. And it's if you've ever been in a situation where you're renting and you're living paycheck to paycheck, and you're trying to save up for a down payment, and you're trying to fix your credit, and you're trying to build credit, and you're trying to catch up on everything. Like it's just not possible. And with I'll kind of throw this out there. There's it's called ALICE, and it means Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And so 60% of people, actually I think it's a little bit over 60% now, countywide fall into that category. So it's not just the 30-ish% of people living in poverty in the city, which, we're like hovering at that, and that's really high. But 60% of people countywide live in that ALICE range, which is, and it's not that they're not working, it's not that they're, doing anything wrong, it's that they can't get ahead. So establishing a home mortgage assistance program, we think is a next step for us. There's a lot that goes into it. HUD does allow us to use home funds for that, and so I think that's certainly something that we're looking at for the next year. But we do have to work with some other banks and establishing the program that we've never done it as a city, so it will take a little bit of doing to get that up and running. But I don't, did I answer?
Yeah.
Thoroughly? Okay.
However, what do you use to measure, and not all the details,
Sure.
but progress? I don't know how long all of these have been around and you've been here and that type of thing, but, it just seems like you're not getting anywhere,
I'll
right?
tell you, so, I've been in my position since, February of 2020. Prior to that, I was the principal planner for a little over a year. When I started, the first year that I started, we had to, besides going into a pandemic, a whole like month after I took this position, we were in what's called our consolidated action plan. So every 5 years, we have to do a consolidated action plan for HUD. And so that's basically our 5-year strategic plan. And then the annual action plan is how are we working towards our consolidated plan through this annual action plan. So in the consolidated plan, we identify different programs and activities. We establish our goals and objectives for the 5 years. I can tell you that most of the programs that we have now, besides home, that we have put together for CDBG are new and or changed from its previous format. Prior to that, we did the same programs for 20 years exactly the same way. I don't know how things were being measured other than we have to report back to HUD every year. And so we were, I think, we were meeting our requirements. I don't think there was ever a time when we didn't, not to my knowledge. So we were at least doing what was required of us. When I took over, we were gung-ho and we didn't have a pandemic quite yet. And we were like, we're gonna just start all over and we're gonna, have all these ways to track and measure and evaluate, and we were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I think now we're a little bit tired, but that said, we are still doing that. So we've actually, so annual action plan, we did, and it's available on our website, and I can actually, when I send this list of other community partner resources, I'll also send the breakdown of the programs that we have for CDBG and dollar amounts and what those programs are and the descriptions. So we did the same for 2 years, and now we're in year 3. And so we're looking back at the last 2 years, trying to measure the successes. And then in this year, we will tweak all of that and or throw something out that didn't have any movement in or evaluate. In doing that, we also are obviously gonna have to take into account the pandemic and how that may have impacted whether or not a program would be successful or not. So
I was gonna say, it'd be hard to measure them.
yeah, it is, because we haven't had a quote-unquote normal period of time to really, I think, give programs an opportunity, but we're gonna look at them anyway and, try to make the most informed decisions that we can based on the information that we have from the past 2 years. And, whether it's measuring based on number of properties that had homeowner programs completed, or we started, so we have, I'm sure some of you are at least familiar with Hands-On Jamestown. JRC used to run the program every year. It was always focused on downtown. Last year, we partnered with the Land Bank. We changed it up. We actually did 7 events instead of 1. We still did the downtown event, and we're actually doing that again this year on May 21st. But this year, we're changing it from 7 events to 3. And then instead of doing so many events, we're gonna do some amnesty days where we have dumpsters set up in different parts of the city, and people can just come and bring, if you've got junk, doesn't matter what it is, bring it and we'll take it. So that's one way that we're kind of looking at, what did we do last year, how did it go, how can we change it this year to make it more successful. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, because I don't know anything about any of this, but for HUD, for example, they could have met all the requirements, but it doesn't mean we're getting anywhere, right?
So, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
kind of what I'm
I totally
wondering,
agree.
you know? Just
Totally
wondering
agree.
if I understand that.
Uh-huh,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, that's kind of why we took it all apart and put it back together in a different way. We wanted to see what we could do, if we could do something with the funding that we were receiving that would have measurable impact than what we've seen.
Thank you very much for all the information. It was very
Absolutely.
helpful.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Doing some good
no
work.
problem.
I hope we can make use of the information too.
Anybody?
And
Oh,
you feel free to reach out to the Department of Development anytime. You can reach out to me directly. So, yeah.
Appreciate it.
in our general discussions, does anybody have anything? One of the issues we discussed was, membership. I hadn't quite connected to the mayor yet. I do recall, but we just haven't been able to connect yet. So I'll follow up on that, membership. I'm gonna ask the secretary. I did have a list somewhere in my archive, but I'm gonna ask her to send that list out to all of us so we can look at that list. And if you have any recommendations for member, you can give to the mayor. And I gave him a couple, but I haven't heard anything, back on it. Any updates on our exploration groups?
It's not fun.
Any updates on the exploration groups? Anyone on the phone? Okay, if not, from the African American group, we are going to the school board to make our presentation again, trying to get a navigator, for African American. I think they're looking at getting 3 more, but we're trying to advocate for a navigator for African American kids. So, keeping our fingers crossed that'll be successful.
Who is that?
We're going to the school board, we've been talking to the school board,
Okay.
trying to get a navigator. The Hispanic group has 2 navigators that work, help, integrate between the school and the kids and families and so forth, help them be successful. And so we asked for one for African American kids, mixed kids, so forth. So we're hoping to get that. I think it will be passed. We're hoping to get that.
When is that board meeting? Do you have like on Tuesdays or something?
Yes, it's the 19th is the next one, and we're trying to get there because, I think they go into their voting section, or for their, budget for the year. You know. So, yeah, 19th, 6 o'clock, they're meeting at the administration building, I believe. So we're looking forward to making an impact there. Any other discussions?
Do you wanna kinda split up and attend any of these? The, neighborhood workshops?
Yeah, that's fine. Good to do.
I will try to pass the information and more as best I can. I won't be able to attend that, but, that conference will be in that weekend, so. But I will try to see that others can get there and, be a part of that.
Yeah, the more the better. And I will just add that even if you live in, say, Ward 1 or Ward 2, and Ward 3 happens to be the day that you can go, like they're all open to everybody from every neighborhood. We just wanted to make sure that we offered them in each area, so.
Do you have like an idea of when the Ward 2 one's gonna be? I'm just curious.
It's probably, I think we're probably gonna look at, I was gonna say Saturday, May ended up making it, another Saturday in May. May's just really crazy.
All right. No other issues. I take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right. We call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.